Welcome to the Critical Media Studies Podcast. We're your hosts, Mike Rapici
and Barry Falk.
Dr. Michael, how are you this evening?
Dr. Barry, I'm doing really well. How are you?
Dr. Mike, Dr. Barry, I'm doing well. Happy to be talking with you and happy to be talking to you about someone I read avidly. His take, we're not going to talk about it tonight, but he just posted um, a cool but very, very rude takedown of the Grammys, which gives you an idea of the range of topics and references touched on by the man of the hour. And the man of the hour is Mr. Freddie deBoer, educator, self-described Marxist of an old school variety. A lot of his writing is about educational reform. He also writes about police reform. And another issue with him actually is our mental disability issues and what to do in cases of I think especially where mental disability issues intersect with policing issues, where there's example of like criminal behavior of uh, the mentally disabled. And so what constitutes justice and policing? But anyway, we're talking about Freddie deBoer. And as I just mentioned, there's a wide variety of topics that this old school, self-described Marxist of the old school talks about, many of them relating to education and to politics. But tonight we're going to talk about Freddie deBoer and AI. In particular, I guess there are two versions, and I guess we can post both of them on the Spotify side or whatever module platform you're using to access this fair podcast. We're looking at the version that's called the Rude version. We're looking at the Rude mix, the indoor plumbing test.
Yeah, we've got cool but rude, and then cool but moderately annoyed. The two versions.
Cool, but we got two versions of this. But both of them are, and it's basically the same content in both essays, and they're all talking about the topic of the last couple of critical media studies podcasts, which is AI. If you've been paying attention, and we hope you have been, we've been talking about AI. And Freddie deBoer has a hot take, a cool but rude take on AI that we're going to talk about. And let me just say that before we go any further, why did I dig this up? Why did I put this to our attention? Because it's funny but serious takedown of AI. Well, it kind of intersects with some of the moments in our previous episodes. I think we ended our last episode with a kind of a cool, but well, we were trying to be funny put down of AI as just being, our imaginary friend. No, what did we call him? Wingman, right?
Yeah.
That, what we want AI to do is not to be God, not to be the singularity, but to be our wingman, or just tell us that we're okay.
Just keep us company.
Keep on telling, just prop up my fragile ego. And so there are a couple moments where maybe more than a couple moments, where we've been taking him down. And this piece, taking down AI. And I recommended this to the attention of the podcast because Freddie deBoer does funny put downs, cool but rude put downs, like few others. And he's taking on AI. I guess that's enough of background. Do you want to take it from here, Michael? You want to sort of, what did I leave out? What do you want me to?
No, I think let's jump in. I think I think there's a difference between deBoer's discussion of AI, or his takedown of AI, as you're calling it, and the last couple conversations we've had. And I don't know that this is necessarily a fair categorization of how deBoer really feels and really sees this, and how much this is him, you know, playing within the cool but rude box. But the
Hmm.
difference, I think one of the significant differences between the other discussion, the earlier discussions we've had in this, is that I think that last week with Thompson and then before that with White Shi, we were sort of looking at, okay, well, what is AI really doing for us, right? And so, you know, we're lonely, we're we need companions out of this, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Um, and so I think in a way, those are very sort of practical, pragmatic. What are we doing with AI? DeBoer's look feels to me a little more rude, which is fine. I can handle a little rudeness.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
but also, he seems more intent to look at AI from 22 to 24, which is the range he roughly outlines at the beginning, as sort of a fully defined or static thing, which instead of enabling us to talk about the ways that AI is in how we actually engage with AI in ways I think one of the discussions we had last week, for example, I think this is an important point to bring up, was about sort of the very personal nature, the idiosyncratic nature and relationships of AI that we form. De
Hmm.
Boer seems a little more intent
Hmm.
on
Hmm.
looking at AI as sort of a blanket thing, predominantly defined by the hype machine around it. And so the argument that he puts forth is like the hype around AI is insane and is absurd. And if you look at it, and we'll talk about this shortly, I'm sure, at best, it's kind of mildly insulting, a la the Apple Warren ad, right? Um, and at worst, it's really sort of
The hype around it is
yes,
mildly.
yes, yes, and
Yeah.
I think it's important to say I don't want to say that De Boer is some sort of technological luddite,
Hmm.
um,
Hmm.
so much as I think he's looking at the hype around it and the promises that seem to be made about what AI is able to do, and he's calling nonsense on it, right? He's saying like, look,
Hmm.
you really there's nothing that AI is able to do right now that we can't just as easily essentially do ourselves if we are
Hmm. Hmm.
functioning adults,
Hmm.
right? And then he points to and we'll talk about the Warren ad. That it's an ad Apple uses for the Apple Intelligence, which is going into their new phones, centered around a character named Warren, who is, you know, the sort of the stereotypical office buffoon who's relying upon AI to make him look less buffoonish. And you know, I think that DeBoer's point here is like, look, this is useful if you're Warren, but Warren can't function in society on his own. No, but
Hmm.
none of you are Warren. So what's the point of this? I mean, he's basically setting the bar exceptionally low. Um,
We may
so
be getting a little bit, maybe we're getting a little too in media race, Michael. Maybe we should go
okay,
back a little bit and because you're talking about the let me propose this. Let me, as you were talking, I started thinking about, I'm trying to think of a way to sort of contextualize DeBoer before we talk about the Warren ad that you just alluded to, and before we talk about his takeaway. And you mentioned the Derek Thompson essay that we discussed from the Atlantic Monthly last week. So let me offer as a way to introduce DeBoer's argument. Let me your description a moment ago made me think of a way in which DeBoer's very different from the discussion of in the way that he contextualizes and explains his starting point with AI.
yes,
And I'll use I'll think back on or mention the previous episode, reference the previous episode in the article we were talking about as a way, hopefully, of setting up DeBoer. So one of the things that I think we both quite liked about the Derek Thompson overview is that AI came at, it was really at the end of a longer argument, a longer historical argument about the history of technology and also about the history of technology in American society, right? And so that AI and loneliness, which was the major topic, right? By the time that Thompson gets to AI, he'd already given a kind of longer history of technologies that precede AI and their social effects. He's making an argument that, the suburbs and suburban architecture and freeways and highways, just the American way of life, had already sort of encouraged us to be solitary, to think in solitary ways about our amusements, our pleasures, our work, and
Right.
our identities.
Right.
And so when Thompson introduced AI in his argument, it's really kind of coming at the end of a longer history. And then once he talks about AI, he's caught up to date, right? And that his history ends. Whereas, and let me just make this last point as a way of introducing and maybe contextualizing deBoer. What you were saying reminds me how deBoer doesn't do that. And I think I sense I sense you feel this is something that hampers his argument. Uh, deBoer is also trying to do a history of technology. That's one of the reasons why he invokes indoor plumbing, a law, and all those and toiletry and things like that on the way to his discussion of AI. But he basically doesn't give these prehistories. He starts with the hype around AI.
Well,
And so a lot of his arguments are about the hype around AI, not about AI itself,
and I
right?
think that's one of the things that bothers me. I think if we look at Thompson, we have a historical accounting of the
Mhm.
ways that technology has shaped society or certainly impacted the formation
Mhm.
or social formations. And for him, AI is a logical terminus because it is the current state of
Exactly.
things.
Right. Absolutely.
And it fits in with a chronological understanding. For me, De Boer's argument really feels very teleological in the sense that he's decided, okay, this hype is obnoxious and unfounded and unwarranted. So when I work back historically, let me look at all of the places
The
where the
hype.
hype has been
Yeah.
problematic.
Yeah.
And so
I think that's your issue, is that he's historicizing and he's even historicizing technology, but mostly it's the hype
it's the
around
hype train.
technology that a lot of his arguments engage.
Hmm.
And now I think we're ready to talk about the Warren episode, if you don't mind.
No, I
The
don't mind at all.
or the Warren advertisement, because that kind of fits in, because the Warren advertisement is a brilliant attempt to engage the hype, right? And to promote the hype. It is the hype,
But I was
right?
gonna say the Warren. So the and so what we'll just I'll describe it in a second. When we talk about the Warren advertisement, this is an ad from Apple about a character named Warren. I think that De Boer's issue with Warren, with the ad, is that he feels that Warren is the best of AI. That this is Warren is Cinderella, AI is that slipper. These two were made for each other, right? So
Made for each
the the ad shows this sort of uh, overweight, sort of unkempt buffoon playing with paper clips and staplers in the like utterly out of he's a child in the office place who
child man in the office place.
right who realizes he needs to send an email to his boss. He dictates an email into his phone in language that would probably make my fifth grade son cringe,
Mhm.
and then AI, he
Fixes
puts it
it.
he pushes a button and AI makes it sound appropriate for the workplace. His boss reads it as Warren spins a chain of paper clips in front of his face or something, right? Looks over at Warren and is shocked that this came from Warren. And then he has won the day. Warren has won the day because he has sent a competent sounding email. And deBoer's argument is that he sends an email that any like I don't even know his phrasing off the top of my head, that any intellectually competent human being should be able to send, essentially.
Right.
Um,
Right.
and so that's his argument, right? Is that this is the best that Apple intelligence, or this is the best that artificial intelligence has to offer us. And we're spending billions of dollars, trillions of dollars. I don't know.
And while at least we want to spend,
Yes, this
we
is going to,
certainly want to spend billions of
right.
dollars on this.
And all of the promises about everything that AI can do, this is in fact
Mhm.
the best that we can offer as proof of concept for AI's abilities.
I like that proof of concept. I think actually reading some of deBoer's very, very snappy prose, I think I found a brief passage that will perfectly illustrate what you are saying. Um,
So do I, but
uh,
it's from the rude version. So
well, it is from the rude version, I don't see any expletives in what I want to read,
fair
so I
enough.
think we're safe. I think we're safe. Oh, I'm not gonna. I do see an expletive, but
Yes.
I'm not reading it. I'm not reading that. I'm skipping to another sentence, and here's the safe part. But I think it will also convey. I think It's a perfect example of what irritate. Well, for DeBoer, this is the hype. And this is the reason why he wants so badly to take the hype down. He feels that when all is said and done, AI is being marketed to the lowest common denominator, and even that is maybe over whatever, overstating it for DeBoer. It's like lower than the lower common
Hmm.
denominator. So everything about the advertisement is designed for you to understand that the fundamental appeal of having AI on your iPhone is so that you, a deeply unintelligent being, can operate as a minimally competent human. They sell they're selling this thing to people who look at Warren and say, "Yeah, that's me," to the absolute dullards, the mentally incompetent. This is the rude bit of deBoer. The mentally incompetent, the too stupid to live. I mean, that's exactly what that commercial is conveying, right? They create a protagonist who's intended to appear as helpless and intellectually vacant as possible. They then demonstrate, this is the hook, right?
Hmm.
They then demonstrate the great value of the product they're selling. Apple Intelligence, uh, um, because having it take an email that he spends 30 seconds writing and converting into a more professional email than any human being who doesn't have some sort of serious cognitive disability could also write in 30 seconds. And Apple is not the only company that's selling AI by demonstrating its ability to shepherd the tragically stupid through life. So this is the hype. This is the target of the hype. And I guess now, unless you want to add something to this, I guess now we should say, what's his counter argument? We should try to summarize what deBoer's counter argument to this. This is the hype. So what type of argument maybe we should talk about? We should talk about what's the argument that deBoer wants to make to counter this hype.
So I
Or do you
don't
have another take on the advertisement? Let's hear it.
know. I think his take on the advertisement is spot on. I don't think he's wrong in anything he says. Um, I think he misses an aspect of this, though, that is valuable.
Mhm.
And I don't know what DeBoer's argument, right, is that AI, the hype around AI is unfounded. Essentially, it doesn't offer us any advantage that we couldn't do, that we couldn't find elsewhere
That was already
pre-existing.
implied in the passage I
Right.
read. Like,
However,
if you were minimally competent,
you
you
don't need
wouldn't need
this.
this great gift, right?
Right. So my my response to this, my issue with this, and actually comes in his very next line.
Yeah, please read it.
He says, you can understand the conundrum. AI is being sold with the most outsized hype of any development in my 43 years of life, without exception. Sure, yes, I think that's fair to say. But what AI can do right now is maybe automate a few dull tasks that affect the white collar worker. What artificial intelligence can actually do in 2025, 2.5 years after people declared the world forever changed by the release of ChatGPT, is remarkably limited. So, this is a little insight, I think, into some of the issues that I have with DeBoer's argument. May I? Or were you going to say something?
I was just about to say maybe we're actually circling around to the finish because I think I think that is a perfect tee. I think you just teed yourself up perfectly to present what I take to be your counter argument.
Maybe, but it will probably take us 45 minutes to
It might take
clearly
us an extra
articulate.
45
So
minutes to fit.
there's two
But
things here. There's two
but
things that I
but
that I
I
want.
think you're teed up to talk about the ending,
Yeah,
right?
that's
And,
that.
like what's your
Yes. So first of all, without exception, what AI can do right now, and he's right. Okay, AI is really still in its infancy, and we've talked at length about this in the past, and we don't need to sort of go through all that. But I will say, and we talked about this before, artificial intelligence is not intelligence in terms of consciousness or any sort of ability to process outside of the data that it has available.
well, just so let's for our own clarity, let's not use the word process. Let's find another word to say what it's
AI
doing.
can't
Because
think.
I think, yeah, okay.
AI cannot think. It does
What
not
it can do
is
is
process the hell
like a
out of
mother.
mass. Yep, but be
Right.
careful.
No,
Okay.
I'm
So
careful. I'm
that's
careful.
one.
I'm not
That's
going to be
one.
rude.
That
Right.
you know, we're very civilized. So that's one. What can AI do right now? And I think that DeBoer, intentionally or not,
Right.
is looking at the hype and stating the hype as the either he's saying, "Wow, this is really annoying." Sure, yes, gotcha. There's lots in the world that's annoying though.
Right. Right.
Or, "Hey, these are failed promises," as if AI has reached its terminus, and it hasn't. So that's one.
Let me stop you right there, Michael. But put a pin in that
Yeah,
thought
yeah,
because
yeah.
I just want to emphasize what you just said because it was very apparent to me in the reading. I think you're really right to talk about what he seems to be saying is that it's fail. I just want to build on and emphasize what you just said. I think it's really important. And I think it's really important because it really does key into the passage you read. In the passage you read, there, I heard it for the first time. He's basically saying, we've had a couple years now for
And it's
this
not
chat
here.
GPT thing. It's not here. So now I think I can tell you the final word. The final word is that it's failed, to use your term, it's failed in its promise. And that's why I can criticize it.
And
Now,
then
please continue.
and then I want to go a step further here with this little section. What artificial can actually do in 2025, 2.5 years after people declared the world forever changed by the release, ChatGPT is remarkably limited. This raises every alarm that, or this mirrors this claim about ChatGPT and what can it do? It's going to change the world, right? It's going to end the world. That is the alarm of every writing teacher 2 years ago, a year ago, right? Whatever it was. That, oh my God, how are we possibly going to assess the state of writing, assess the state of education when now anybody has access to this free tool which will mimic composition, which will mimic thought. And it's remarkably limited. Yeah, and anybody who tries to teach students how to write that comes face to face with something like ChatGPT, as I imagine DeBoer did or is at least aware of, certainly it's my world, it's your world, right? Is going to be frustrated by this because what you're trying to do, like a big part of my job is trying to explain the vacuity of the, of the hype to my students to say, look, it's not real. What are you laughing?
I'm laughing because that's such a beautiful phrase. I feel that's what I do all the time. I should have that as my slogan. I am the person who explains the vacuity of the hype.
Right.
That is me
It's,
to say
but I think that's a lot
why.
of us. So I don't blame him or anybody for like, good God, this is not real.
Sure,
Okay.
sure.
So that's I think that's the first of two arguments I would make around ChatGPT, right? That yeah, I understand the frustration. If you drop down a little more, he's talking about, ChatGPT synthesizes information and you can produce images from text, but we could already do this. And he says, and anyway, for the vast majority of people, the ability to generate images from text falls firmly into the quote, that's cool category of minor amusements, not in the realm of real practical consequence. And he's right. But I think what he misses is the fact that a lot of people, a lot of smart people, a lot of Warrens are really taken with the quote, that's cool category. That there is value in something being cool, but not of practical consequence. The ability to do something in a different way is interesting. And the ability to do something in a different way, I feel, is one of the catalysts that drives consequential change.
Mhm,
And so I think that to demonize a technology because it presents an alternate way of doing things that is
mhm,
certainly not cost effective, that
mhm,
is certainly not
mhm,
necessary in the practical sense,
mhm,
but that does offer an alternative
mhm,
and that is a way of a new way of doing something, even if it's not
mhm,
efficient. There's
mhm,
still potential value in that. And I'm not trying to be like the capitalist AI apologist here today. Um, but as we trace his argument down a little bit further,
mhm,
um, he says it's powerfully difficult to define what is really useful about this technology, as opposed to what's cool.
mhm.
Again, I think that's kind of a short-sighted take.
You don't like that binary. You don't like that binary, the opposition between cool and what was his opposing term? There was an opposing term.
Practical
Cool and
consequence.
practical consequences.
Right. And I get it. And if the world ends tomorrow, then give me practical consequence over cool. I don't really care. But that sort of bleeding edge of advancement that is cool
Mhm,
becomes consequential in time.
mhm,
And then the argument becomes one of, well, is this worth the massive investments that we're taking? Would James Crary agree? Right. And the answer to that is we just don't know. Because if this, and I'm not suggesting it will, I'm not trying to add to the hype machine, but if it was able to somehow live up to some of the hype that could
mhm,
conceivably be achieved through massive data crunching,
mhm.
then maybe it is. And I certainly don't think it's fair to say that it's. I totally agree. The hype is stupid, and I've seen enough of Warren. I'm tired of telling my students that they really should do their own work. But that's
You've
not to
seen
say,
enough of the Warren type, in other
yeah.
words. You think
And and
enough of the
and
Warren
and,
type.
and maybe there's a real argument that what this does is this helps create more Warren, and less of his.
Well, he does that. I wish he did make that argument. That argument, maybe that's implied here, but I think he needed to spell it out that whether or not AI creates this subcompetent human type.
Right.
Maybe
Does it make
you
us
think that
late?
was
Does
implied? You think that
I
was
see? No, I
implied? Show
don't. I
me.
don't. I think it's a more interesting argument to say, does it make us lazy? Does it
Yeah,
make
yeah,
us
yeah, yeah, yeah,
stupid?
exactly.
Does
Yeah,
it does it
yeah.
make us Warren? I don't think so. I think he says that this is for Warren.
Which is, yeah, I agree with you. I'm sensing that um, that's an argument he could have made, but he doesn't make. That
No.
instead he just says it's for Warren without thinking about the context that produced Warren,
Hmm.
actually. Warren is socially produced as
Well,
well.
I think, well, but
Mm.
no, see, I think his argument seems to be that Warren is some sort of unfortunate reality that just
Mhm.
exists in the wild. But for the vast majority of us that aren't Warren, we don't need this.
Yeah. Now and that's an argument that shame on an old school Marxist for making that kind of argument because that seems because I think the old school Marxists that I know would say that, Warren is a social type that's constructed, right? You
Hmm.
have Warrens that are made by now. Maybe that is a place that deBoer could go to or would want to go to, but it's interesting that he doesn't make that connection between AI and Warren, right? He's mostly dealing with the hype and
Well,
talking about his annoyance with the hype.
yeah, and I think you can certainly excuse him for not going there because that's not the arc of his argument, right? The
Sure,
arc of the
sure.
argument, and maybe this is a good time to move to the end unless you want to.
Yeah, well, no, but also, but did you finish your point about where as I understand it, Michael, you're saying that amid all this wonderful rhetorical finesse and all the rhetorical figures in this essay and all the appeals to emotion, in a weird way, weird for us because I think we've been very alert to the hype
Hmm.
or AI and
Hmm.
sort of trying to avoid the hype in our last couple episodes. But in this episode, I sense what we're doing is we're giving AI its due. And one of the ways in which we're giving AI its due is talking about the fact I mentioned this out, if I may, I'm going to repeat something I said in the pre-game show
Yeah.
for the episode where the one so if AI isn't thinking, and you already alluded to this, if AI isn't a model of thinking, a model of divine thinking, extra human, post human thinking, it sure as heck is a model of processing and a model of, in fact, not a model of it. It produces a kind of quick processing of vast amounts of information, the like of which humans have never seen or encountered or work with again. And that's an empirical fact of AI,
Hmm.
right? That's not hype. That's
Right.
an empirical fact. And even if AI didn't develop, but of course it's developing rapidly, Moore's law type of thing.
Hmm.
But even if it didn't, it would still be empirically the case that AI means that we have capabilities for processing what looks to be a seeming infinity, a virtual infinity of information. And that's not hype. So if you simply say AI equals hype, you're missing this empirical advance, I dare say,
Hmm.
advance in human technology that's marked by AI.
Right. But I think his argument is that I don't see, and this is where again I have a problem because his argument seems to be much more clearly centered on hype does not equal promise. Well, what's the
Sure.
promise? The promise is all of these long-term projections, which we're not getting. We got Warren. Thanks for Warren. And can we, I imagine that the next step here is really can we continue to legitimately um,
Keep on doing
keep
this and
keep keep
extending the money, spending the money.
right? Does it
Right.
does it really get us to does it get us past Warren?
Right. Does
And
it?
his argument concludes, right, that essentially what AI has proven its use for is relieving us of mundane tasks. And that every time we find a way to not have to tend to one mundane task, we'll replace it with something else.
I think we're ready to bring the plane in for a landing, if we may say that.
Shall we?
Because I think, in light of what you just said, how about I read the penultimate paragraph of The Indoor Plumbing Test by Freddie deBoer, and I'm going to allow you to make a response or to interrupt me as I go through, or if you want to save your response to the end, whatever you choose to do, my friend. And then I will have a response, and then I think we're going to go part amicably and go forward in the night, with or without AI.
I'll play with a smart speaker for a little bit
And you'll play with a smart.
and drool.
Okay, so deBoer writes, quote, I am left to ask the same question I always ask. And it is interesting. deBoer references this, and we should do this. Uh, deBoer is also kind of sick of writing about AI, and he references in here that he has talked about
Yeah,
AI for a
yeah,
couple of years. So that's kind of what's generating the pathos and the negativity and the conclusion in the essay.
sure, sure.
So I am still, I am still asking the same question I always ask when I think about the question, when I confront the reality of AI. Why do people need this so bad? Um, I get it when it comes to corporations. Corporations need to make. So what does he mean by that, Michael? Probably corporations need hype in order to keep profits going, right? Is that,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, I don't get it though when it comes to people who are not directly financially remunerated by AI hype. There is such a palpable, almost pathological need regarding AI, a profoundly vulnerable emotional investment that exceeds the rational. And I have to say, as I have done before, that what people really want is to escape mundane reality and of all its grinding indignities, like VR, virtual reality, and radical life extension and exploring the stars. AI suggests the possibility of a technology beyond technology, of a technology that creates a fissure in ordinary life and the beginning of something new. But the ability to create text or a picture on the screen can't do that.
Let me
So,
stop. Let me
yes,
stop you.
please, 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 please.
To
I,
this,
I want to stop and I want you to comment and you know, give a
so
parting.
a couple questions.
Mhm.
Did we need to go to the moon? Do we need to colonize Mars? Right? There are arguments that say yes, but in the moment, no. And those were incredibly expensive, incredibly dangerous missions that we took on and we rallied behind. And you could say, well, these were unifying,
Yeah.
um, you know, um, endeavors. You say,
Mhm.
okay, well, this is not unifying. Thompson helped us with that one already, right? Like this is not unifying. This is maybe alienating in a
That's
weird way.
true. It's true. True.
But I guess my question is is talking about the AI hype different or is it the same to maybe just wanting a break for things? Because before there was AI, right, there were cat videos. We're staring at the sky,
It's
just what,
still our cat videos,
just
thank
wondering.
God.
Yeah, but like, I guess, Mike, what's wrong with just liking something cool? I can. So I mentioned earlier, like I'm gonna go. Maybe I'll go play with a smart speaker after this and see if I can get it to
Uh-huh,
give me weird
uh-huh.
music I don't know. It's not earth shattering. It's not consequential, right? And it saves me from getting up and doing something, or even worse, it saves me from having to pick up a remote control and push a button. It's like, yes, it has elevated my ability to be sedentary, and I appreciate that, right? But is that wrong?
Well,
Is that bad?
Michael,
I don't understand why that's bad.
yeah, well, I'm trying to answer that question. I'm thinking of what would be the answer to the question. I think what deBoer might say is there's nothing wrong with it if it wasn't destroying the planet. If it wasn't about the need, if it wasn't so quickly or so insistently linked to accompanied by the need to invest millions of dollars and all this sort of capital or outlay. So in other words, if we're a smaller scale financial and environmental investment,
Then no
then
big deal.
maybe no big deal. I mean, I'm trying to I think that's what
Or would
uh,
it would
critique
it
with that
would,
this has escalated And one of the reasons why so hype is everywhere. That's also part of your argument. Hype is everywhere. So why is it hype necessarily pernicious in this? I think he would say, I'm not saying it's right, but I think he would say it's the scale, it's the cost, it's the payoff.
Or would it be better if I was able to engage with this and categorize it as
as only cool.
something cool,
Yeah,
something
yeah.
stupid but cool? Hey, this is pretty dumb and unnecessary. But I mean, I'll give you an example. A long time ago, but I'm still proud of this. I set up a series of mirrors in my house so that I could use the remote control from my bathroom for the stereo 3 rooms away.
Brilliant.
It
That's
took
brilliant.
forever,
That's not even
right?
cool. That's brilliant.
It,
That's
it it took
brilliant.
forever, but I
World
was I was
shattering.
so I was so really tickled by the fact that I was able to bounce my remote control off of a series of mirrors so that I could make it work on another side of the house, right? That served
It's astonishing.
no. Okay, so again, and this was like 25 years ago. I mean, this is a while ago. This was before we had a lot of the fun stuff we have now. Now you just speak and it hears you. Was it consequential? No. Was it beneficial? No. Was it even useful after I had to move a mirror? No. It was utterly I couldn't do it again. But it was a cool thing that I did. It was
Sure.
stupid, but it was cool. Is this better if we can just say this is stupid,
He probably, am I
but it's cool?
wrong to think that I would like to think, I do think that part of his anger has to do with the fact that it's not just being marketed that way. That,
But do we just have to call Warren out for what he is
yeah.
and say, okay, that's fine? Um, well, I feel like I just gave far too much away about myself with that little story, by the way.
No, no, no,
Um,
no. I think we're all sort of marveling at your brilliance and ingenuity. That was not a Warren would
my
not have been
laziness.
able to do
I
that.
will work so hard to be lazy, and I guess maybe that's all he really wants is for us to say, look, it's not hype, it's stupid. The value isn't here yet.
I think, but okay, realistically, if that were the game though, you can't say it's cool. Give me 50, $500 billion. You
Right.
can't say that.
And so maybe is this more of a
So maybe
social
that's a
critique?
discrepancy. That's the problem. There's a necessary kind of false consciousness or duplicity or corruption in it because of that disconnect, right?
Hmm.
We should just be saying, it's cool. Give us some money.
Right.
Give us 1 million. Give us a couple million.
And that's where
But
we
we should,
have the
yeah,
problem with, the corporate mendacity, right? Where we say this is
right.
going to change the world and this is this and this is that. Like you need that in order to drive the money, but it's not aligned with the reality that he wants to see, that deBoer wants us to be talking about.
But along those lines, Michael, let's engage in our ending here with
Yeah.
that last bit. What do you think about that last bit? I was struck by the last sentence I read. So, he kind of moves away from AI. I hadn't really caught this before. And I think this is worth maybe us remarking on in our exit remark. He kind of leaves behind AI. I hadn't noticed it. Kind of leaves behind AI. And then he equates it with SpaceX and equates, AI is a symptom of a desire, a very human desire, not to be cool. It's not about coolness anymore, but this desire to find a technology that will free us from technology and humanity and free us from everything. Just like this ultimate dream, not of cool, but of liberation from the human condition and even from the technological, even from needing technology. So when he talks about, I mean, obviously, uh, what are his examples? Exploring the stars, that requires technology. But he's admitting that the desire to explore the stars, to circle around the Earth, even though it's enabled by technology that costs a lot of money, there's a way in which it's a kind of fulfillment of a human dream and desire, right? To get beyond humanity, beyond the humdrum, a possibility of a technology beyond technology that will like fix a fissure, quote, a fissure in ordinary human life. And he mentions cryogenics, right? The desire that all our mega tech bros have. They all want to like live 1,000 years, right? They all want to get rid of their bodies and live in their little pickled brains or frozen brains for 1,000 years. And he's saying, well, that's really what AI is about. It's not about being cool or being practical or being useful or even about well, it is about the singularity, the idea of the singularity fix if the idea of the singularity is about fixing a fissure, a gap, a lacuna in human existence.
See, I think his problem here is he's saying, and again, this lines up well with the rest of what he's written here, right? Is he's saying, look, what we want is an escape.
What we want is an escape.
Okay. And your life is boring.
Your life
VR
is
VR didn't get you out of it. Not because you're boring. You're not Warren, right? Life is mundane. And all these things, VR didn't do it. Going to the moon didn't do it, right? These are so many failed pharmacons,
failed
essentially,
pharmacons, right?
right? We're
Right.
getting the toxicity out of them. In this case, it's in hype, right? Um, but they're not going to solve anything. And he's basically saying, look, I mean, if you go down, this was the penultimate paragraph. If you go down to the final paragraph, what he's really saying is, look, you're still going to have to mow your lawn. You're still going to have to do
Yes.
all the boring
Yes.
things you don't want to do. And if it's not
Yeah.
mowing the lawn, it's something else. But you'll
Yes.
be fine, right? It's almost
So
as if
you
like,
can live without AI in the same way you can live without radical life extensions or
so is this?
joining what's his name? Bezos in the space rocket to Mars or on the moon.
Yeah, I mean, I almost feel like this is sort of just a. I don't want to say this is that his conclusion is anti-technological, but it kind of just seems to point to this idea that hey, none of these things are going to change the nature and structure of your life in any way that grants you that freedom. And that's fine. It doesn't make you a failure, but these technologies don't make you a success.
Wow, that's really well put.
You're still
That's really
not
well
Warren,
put, dude.
and that's
I,
okay.
I think it's really well put. Let's stop on a high note, shall we? That was great how you formulated that. I think that is his final point.
Yeah,
I
I
guess
mean,
we're agreeing with that. I guess
yeah.
that's a part of the essay that I think we can all stand behind.
Yeah. Oh, I think so. Again, I don't think there's a whole lot in here to disagree with. I just think that there's a whole lot here that he sort of sidesteps,
About
which is,
AI that he's missing, right?
yeah, yeah. But that's fine. Well, good job, Dr. Barry.
Well,
And we did this
good
without
job,
Hey,
Dr.
we did
Peachy.
this without
We
ChatGPT.
did this without it. When are we going to do our ChatGPT episode?
I don't,
I don't know.
I don't want to do
Our
that.
ChatGPT generated episode. That would be great. It could do
Barry,
it. It could do it. It could write our script.
no,
We could do that.
no.
That would be fun.
Barry,
But no, we don't want that because it would rob us of the fun of talking to you, dear listener and dear subscriber. So like and subscribe. Until next time, Dr. Apici, I wish you good night
Barry, have a
and
wonderful
good
evening.
health.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Critical Media Studies podcast. To find out more about the show, check out our webpage at criticalmediastudiespodcast.com.